Hello there, I'm Virtuoso, and welcome to my complete gear progression guide for Eterspire. The cycle of obtaining and upgrading gear forms the backbone of Eterspire's combat progression loop, and is the main way you get stronger over time. The gear system can appear quite overwhelming for newer players, so in this video, we'll go over everything you need to know about gear progression. We'll cover how to tell you got a good piece of gear that suits your needs, as well as where to obtain better gear as you level, and how gear upgrading works. This video will also cover a lesser known mechanic for gear, and a recommended roadmap for gear progression as you level up in combat. Gear in Eterspire is obtained through defeating mobs and bosses or purchased from NPC shops, and come in the form of weapons, armors, rings, and amulets. Most gear grants you specific stats that affect your ability to deal and receive damage. For weapons, these stats include damage, attack speed, bonus attack speed, and vitality. Damage represents the damage your weapon can do every time you auto-attack or use an active combat ability. Attack speed represents how fast you can auto-attack with the weapon equipped. Bonus attack speed represents additional attack speed you receive from the weapon, which helps you auto-attack faster. And vitality is a stat that grants you additional health. For armor, the stats you receive are HP, which also grants you additional health, bonus attack speed, and strength, which grants you additional damage to both your auto attacks and active combat abilities. Finally, for rings, the stats you receive are strength and vitality. Gear are also divided into separate tiers based on their level ranges, with higher tiers generally representing better gear that require a higher level to equip. Gear quality, shown as a percentage score up to 100%, represents how close you are to obtaining the maximum possible stats for the piece of gear. While a higher gear quality generally means the gear is overall better, this does not necessarily mean that the gear is better for your specific needs. For example, if your goal is to do more damage per hit, you may opt for a piece of gear that grants higher damage or strength, even if the gear is shown to be of lower quality overall. For normal basic gear, there's also a chance for negative stats, though you can remove them with some specific items when upgrading gear, which we will cover in a later segment of the video. You can also acquire excellent versions of weapons, armors, and rings by defeating mobs and bosses, which are rare to obtain and have overall better stats than their normal counterparts. By completing quests or defeating mobs and bosses, you also obtain a variety of shards and runes, which are used to upgrade gear to further increase their stats, specifically your weapons, armors, and rings. Upgrading gear involves two locations. First is the blacksmith, which can be found in most towns and marked with an anvil icon on the minimap. There are 5 types of items to consider when it comes to upgrading gear: shards, exalt runes, purging runes, soul fragments, and reforge runes. Shards are used to upgrade a piece of gear by 1 level each time, up to a maximum level of +5. However, you would often find yourself not able to upgrade gear to +5 right away using only shards. This is where exalt runes come in, as they're used to increase the number of times you can upgrade a piece of gear with shards, up to a maximum level of +5. Purging runes are used to remove one random negative stat from a piece of gear, specifically from normal basic gear. Beyond +5, you can upgrade a piece of gear further using soul fragments, but personally I do not recommend you bother with this until you reach endgame gear progression, which we will cover later in this video. Finally, reforge runes randomize the stats of a piece of gear when used on it, effectively allowing you to reroll gear for a chance to get the stats you desire. This is also something that I do not generally recommend you bother with until reaching the endgame, as you'll find out that reforge runes are quite valuable compared to other runes. Do keep in mind that the shards and runes you use to upgrade gear have to match the appropriate level range for your gear. For example, you need to use steel shards and runes to upgrade steel gear, and emerald shards and runes to upgrade emerald gear. Here's a handy table of all the corresponding shards for each level range, as well as what specific gear they can be used to upgrade. I will also include a timestamp for this segment in the video description, so you can come back and refer to this table as you progress through the game. While you can obtain runes through defeating mobs and bosses, you can also craft them yourself. This is where the second location relevant to upgrading gear comes in, the transmogrification table located in Tasaraga's abode. The transmogrification table is located next to Tagarasa himself, which is how you can create items to upgrade gear with using shards and runestones. Runestones are purchased directly from Taragasa himself. You can find the full recipe list in a transmogrification table, but here are the ones relevant for creating runes to upgrade gear. Exalt runes are created using 2 shards and 1 runestone. Purging runes using 1 shard and 1 runestone. Soul fragments using 3 shards of any kind, and reforge runes using 1 shard, 1 soul fragment, and 1 runestone. I also want to note here that some gear dropped from bosses are corrupted, meaning they cannot be equipped until they are cleansed using catalysts. Here's a list of catalysts, where to obtain them, and all the current gear that requires catalysts to cleanse, along with how many are needed per piece. To cleanse a corrupted gear, place the gear along with the appropriate amount of catalyst on the transmogrification table and press transmogrify to cleanse it. While cleansing gear with catalyst is not a mechanic that's relevant to the current endgame gear, that could change with future updates, so it's still good to familiarize yourself with the system of gear progression. Amulets is another category of gear to keep in mind for gear progression, as they provide you with an additional active ability for you to use in combat. There are currently 6 types of amulets in Eterspire at the time of this video: Fire Explosion, Heal, Cure Blind, Resist Stun, Cure Poison, and Cure Slow. Fire Explosion amulets provide you with an active combat ability that deals damage to nearby enemies. Heal amulets provide you with the ability to heal you and your party members for a small amount of health. Finally, Cure Blind, Resist Stun, Cure Poison, and Cure Slow amulets provide you with the ability to gain temporary immunity to the specified status effects. Most amulets can be purchased from specific NPC shops, and here's a list of where to purchase each tier of amulets. The 5th and currently final tier of amulets at the time of this video are obtained from defeating specific bosses, which we'll cover once we move on to gear progression recommendations later in the video. A lesser known mechanic relevant to gear progression is the use of essences. Essences are purchased from Old Gaswacha at her house in Firefly Forest. There are currently 2 types of essences which you can purchase from her: Essence of Chaos and Essence of Mimicry. Essence of Chaos is used at the transmogrification table to upgrade a Reforged rune to a higher level range by combining it with the Reforged rune and a shard of the desired level range. This is particularly handy if you have a large amount of Reforged runes saved up from earlier levels. Essence of Mimicry, on the other hand, is used to craft Mimic runes, which can be used to transform any gear you obtain in the game into a cosmetic item. Mimic runes are crafted at the transmogrification table using 1 shard, 1 Essence of Mimicry, and 1 runestone. Do keep in mind that the Mimic rune you use must match the corresponding level range of the gear you're transforming into a cosmetic. Now that you have a full understanding of how to obtain and upgrade gear, here's my recommended gear progression from start to finish. For general leveling needs, normal basic gear from mobs are more than sufficient, so do not feel pressured to obtain boss gear as you progress through your combat levels. You'll also outlevel gear fairly quickly, so there's no need to concern yourself too much with getting high quality gear. You do, however, want to prioritize increasing your damage output, ideally to the point which you can one-shot mobs with your active combat abilities. Therefore, prioritize maximizing your damage stats from weapons and strength stats from armors and rings. While gear can be purchased from NPC shops, I do not recommend you do so as they can be quite expensive. The exceptions are weapons that would provide you with a substantial boost to your damage output. While upgrading armors and rings is not necessary for leveling purposes, you can benefit greatly from leveling your weapons up to +5 using the appropriate shards and runes, as doing so will drastically increase your damage output. There's no need to upgrade weapons past +5 using soul fragments though, as you're better off saving those for endgame gear progression or trading them with other players for gold. While normal basic gear is more than sufficient for leveling until the endgame, one special outlier to consider for leveling is Flareum gear. Flareum gear are boss gear obtained through defeating Soldrenia, a level 150 boss nicknamed Golem by more experienced players located in Isle Cave in Faraway Islands. This is one of the previous endgame bosses introduced back when the level cap was only at 120. Therefore, despite how the actual power of Flareum gear is equivalent to level 150 boss gear, you only need to be level 120 to equip them. If you're lucky enough to get your hands on even just a good quality Flareum weapon, you're basically set leveling wise, as you'll be able to do more than enough damage to one-shot mobs your level. However, Flareum gear can be difficult to come by, as players no longer farm them as often as when Golem was the endgame boss back in the day. If you come across a good deal though, feel free to trade some of your gold for normal Flareum gear with other players. Excellent versions are much more expensive and are definitely not necessary for leveling, so don't feel compelled to acquire them for leveling purposes. Once you reach the level cap, you have now entered endgame gear progression, which currently consists of acquiring endgame gear of higher tier through participating in endgame trials with other players. However, before doing so, make sure to obtain tier 5 amulets for at least Cure Blind and Resist Stun, as they're important for you when participating in endgame content. Tier 5 Cure Blind Amulets are obtained from defeating Luce, a level 80 remnant located in Frozen Dragon Cave in Vestadian range, while Tier 5 Resist Stun Amulets are obtained from defeating Jurib, a level 100 remnant located in Scorched Dragon Cave, also in Vestadian range. These amulets are critical for helping you and your party survive through group endgame content. You can also purchase these amulets from other players through trading, though they can be quite expensive to obtain through this method. Gear progression in Endgame involves obtaining a series of endgame gear in order. First, obtain a full set of normal Wintertide or ideally, normal Azurbreak gear. These can be obtained as drops through participating in the first through third trials of the mountain, but you can also obtain them directly through trading with other players at generally affordable prices given how often they drop in trials. Here's a list of where specific armor pieces drop in each trial. Keep in mind that beyond Wintertide and Azurbreak armor, there's also a rare chance for you to obtain Fatebringer armor, the second best in slot armor currently in the game, which will be crucial for the final step of gear progression. The next step will be to obtain an endgame boss weapon, which can be obtained through participating in the 4th Trials of the Mountain or through trading with other players. Similar to the 1st through 3rd trials, this is where you obtain Wintertide and Azurbreak weapons. There's also a rare chance for you to obtain Fatebringer weapons, which are highly recommended for you to acquire to ensure you can do sufficient damage to bosses for the final step of gear progression. It's also important to keep in mind that each class has a meta weapon which is highly sought after due to the benefit they bring in group content. These are Bardish for Guardian, which provides party-wide damage reduction, Halberd for Warrior, which provides a party-wide damage boost, Short Sword for Rogue, which provides a party-wide attack speed boost, and Thunderstaff for Sorcerer, which provides a large circular area of effect weapon damage skill. The final step of gear progression is to obtain Everfrost gear, the best in slot gear currently in the game, through the final and hidden trials of the mountain. Specifically for the hidden trials, it's important for you to equip yourself with at least 4 pieces of Fatebringer armor prior to entering, since you will receive significantly increased damage without them. Like with all other gear in the game, you can trade directly with other players to obtain Everfrost gear. However, keep in mind that they're currently extremely expensive, as they're rare to obtain and are the currently best in slot gear in the game. At this stage in the game, you'll also want to consider upgrading your gear beyond +5 using soul fragments. Do keep in mind that there's a chance for the upgrade to fail, in which case the gear would be downgraded back to +5. The chances of a successful upgrade decreases as you continue to upgrade gear, stopping at 50%. Successfully upgrading gear to +10 using only soul fragments can be quite challenging, sometimes feeling like something that could only happen when pigs fly, which is why some players may opt to use blessed or heart fragments to upgrade gear instead to save on soul fragments. Blessed fragments provide an increased chance for the upgrades to succeed compared to soul fragments, and has the additional benefit of not downgrading gear back to +5 if an upgrade fails. Heart fragments provide significantly higher chances for successful upgrades compared to both blessed and soul fragments, though unlike blessed fragments, there's still the risk of gear downgrading back to +5 on a failed upgrade. And few things are more painful in this game than failing a +9 to +10 upgrade using a heart fragment. Both Blessed and Heart Fragments are mainly purchased through the premium store with crystals, though free-to-play players can also obtain them by trading with other players. This is also the stage of the game which Reforged runes become crucial to help you re-roll endgame gear for you to achieve the desired stats for you to comfortably progress through endgame content. While this is ultimately down to personal preference, I generally do not recommend going for 100% gear quality until you have obtained the best in slot endgame gear. Re-rolling and upgrading endgame gear until they are 100% quality and fully upgraded represents the final stage of gear progression in Eterspire. And that covers everything you need to know about gear progression. If you haven't yet, make sure you check out my combat leveling guide to help you reach the required levels for gear progression. Until next time, this is Virtuoso signing out. Happy hunting.